Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through time, to the heart of the Ottoman Empire. You stand on the deck of a creaking ship, the Bosphorus wind kissing your face. Ahead, the skyline of 16th century Istanbul rises from morning mist, its hundreds of domes glowing gold in the first light. The call to prayer echoes from minarets like a choir of metal birds. Fishermen toss their nets, spice merchants shout in Turkish and Greek, and the smell of roasting coffee mixes with salt air and burning wood. You feel dizzy from it all, the noise, the color, the centuries pressing against your skin. You probably won't survive this day, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the boat, boots sinking into the muddy pier. Istanbul, still called Constantinople by some, is alive with contradictions. Greek widows in black shawls trade side by side with Armenian jewelers and Persian spice dealers. The empire stretches across 3 continents, a living map made of ambition. From the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, the Sultan's shadow covers millions. You, however, are just one confused traveler with no papers. No Turkish, and a very modern sense of personal space. The first thing you notice is the eyes. Everyone looks, really looks, at you. Your clothes are strange, your accent stranger. A street boy laughs and calls you Yabansi, foreigner. You smile nervously, clutching your imaginary passport that won't exist for another few centuries. You wander uphill toward the city walls, built on the bones of Byzantine emperors. The bricks beneath your feet whisper stories of sieges, crusades, and plagues. Above, gulls scream like gossiping spirits. A man selling roasted chestnuts offers you one, but you hesitate, it's still steaming. He laughs, mutters something about soft hands, and waves you along. The empire at its height is breathtakingly organized. Everything has its place, from the Grand Vizier who whispers into the Sultan's ear, to the butcher's guild that controls every slice of lamb. You can't just open a shop here, you need to belong to a esnaf, a guild, with its own rules, prayers, and secret handshakes. Historians still argue whether this rigid structure preserved social harmony or strangled innovation. But right now, it mostly means you have nowhere to belong. A bell rings somewhere deep in the city. It's not a church. It's a call from the palace kitchens, summoning hundreds of cooks, scullions, and tasters to prepare the Sultan's breakfast. The empire runs on ritual. At sunrise, imams chant, guards shift positions, and market gates open with a clang that echoes like a heartbeat. You find yourself on a street lined with cypress trees, their scent sharp and clean. Ahead towers the Topkapi Palace, shimmering behind white walls. It's not just a home, it's a city within a city, where decisions about war, peace, and taxes are made between sips of sherbet. You'd love to peek inside, but the guards, tall men in white robes and curved swords, make that idea suicidal. Instead, you slip into the flow of people moving toward the hippodrome. Now a public square filled with chatter and pigeons. Children chase each other around an ancient Egyptian obelisk, hauled here centuries ago. A muezzin's voice trembles through the air again, melancholy, beautiful. It's a reminder that, in this empire, faith isn't private. It's rhythm. 5 times a day, everything stops. Even the wind seems to pause. You think of your phone, your schedule, your endless notifications, and realize this world runs on divine timing. People don't rush, they flow. But that doesn't mean it's peaceful. Beneath the calm, the Ottoman machine is ruthless. One wrong word against the Sultan, one whispered rumor of disloyalty, and you might find your head displayed near the city gate. A passing scholar notices your bewildered face and mistakes it for reverence. He tells you, in slow Ottoman Turkish, that this city is the navel of the world. You nod as if you understand, though the only words you catch are Allah, sultan, and coffee. He gestures you to follow, and curiosity wins. He leads you to a small garden where fountains murmur. Here, men debate under shade trees, quoting poets like Rumi and Hafiz, their words flowing like the water around them. You listen, amazed, as they mix philosophy with gossip about the court. Did you hear, one whispers, that the Sultan's astrologer predicted an earthquake? The others laugh softly. In a city this old, the ground trembles often. The scholar offers you a seat and a clay cup filled with something dark and fragrant. The world's first coffeehouse culture is blooming here. You sip, and it's bitter, thick, and powerful. Coffee in the Ottoman Empire isn't just a drink, it's a social revolution. People gather to think, argue, dream. It's dangerous stuff. The authorities sometimes ban it, fearing caffeine-fueled rebellion. But tonight, no one seems worried. For a moment, you forget you're out of place. The city glows in late sunlight, distant domes burn like embers. Then a guard appears, scanning faces. The men fall silent. The scholar leans close and murmurs, "Careful what you say, friend. The walls have ears." You laugh, thinking he's joking, but his eyes stay deadly serious. A street performer bursts into song nearby, breaking the tension. His lute trembles with melody, a tune older than empire itself. Children toss him coins. You drift again through the crowd, following the music until you find yourself at the edge of the Golden Horn, where fishermen haul in silver flashes of anchovy. The air smells of salt, sweat, and civilization. A merchant shouts in Arabic, another in Greek, another in Venetian Italian. The Ottoman world is a symphony of tongues. You realize, slowly, that this empire isn't one nation, it's a mosaic. Turks, Greeks, Arabs, Jews, Armenians, all bound together by trade, prayer, and fear of displeasing the Sultan. As night falls, oil lamps flicker to life, floating like fireflies through the streets. Somewhere, a muezzin's final call fades into silence. You find a spot beside the harbor and watch the stars ripple in the black water. You're still alive, somehow. But you feel it already, the weight of this empire pressing down, the endless rules, the invisible hierarchies, the ancient eyes that see everything. The city hums like a living creature. You exhale, trying to relax, but even the air here seems to demand respect. Tomorrow, you'll need to bathe, eat, and speak like an Ottoman if you want to blend in. But for now, you close your eyes, the scent of rosewater and smoke curling around you, as the empire dreams on. Morning arrives with the clatter of metal bowls and the faint splash of water. Sunlight filters through lattice windows, painting the room in geometric gold. A cat stretches on the sill, blinking as if judging your lack of hygiene. In the Ottoman Empire, that's nearly a crime. Outside, the air smells of soap and steam. A domed bathhouse gleams ahead, the hammam. People file in with towels. You hesitate. A smiling attendant waves you inside. "Bayurin," he says, "welcome." You step into warmth thick with olive oil and rosewater. Men move through clouds of steam, chatting about trade and taxes. Here, bathing is more than hygiene, it's holiness. The Prophet's words on purity echo through the empire. Even the poor visit the hammam. To skip it invites shame sharper than a scimitar. The attendant guides you through hotter chambers until you reach the marble heart of the bath. He hands you a coarse keys and grins. Then the scrubbing begins, relentless, almost brutal. Gray rolls of skin peel away. You gasp as he douses you in warm water. "See?" He laughs. Now you are Ottoman. Historians debate the hammam's role, social hub, political parlor, or den of gossip and intrigue. Probably all at once, clean and dazed, you're handed a towel and jasmine oil. Outside, the air feels like silk. You walk through the bazaar, where everyone smells faintly of soap and spice. Barbers sharpen razors and exchange rumors. Hygiene here is public performance, a barber beckons you in. Don't move, he warns, scraping your face with terrifying precision. When he's done, he splashes rosewater that burns like judgment. Now you look respectable, he declares. You believe him, beards are serious business, neatness signals virtue, neglect suggests sin. You study your reflection, clean, red-faced, and slightly alarmed. Fountains trickle everywhere. Men rinse before prayer, children splash, dogs drink. Water means purity and belonging. Yet, in contrast, most homes lack plumbing. The wealthy hire private attendants, noble ladies turn hammam visits into spa-like salons of gossip and sherbet. Someone mentions a strange cosmetic, crocodile dung and clay as sunblock. You pray it's rumor. At a perfumery, glass bottles gleam, musk, ambergris, rose. God loves those who smell pleasant, the merchant smiles. You buy sandalwood oil to blend in. It costs more than lunch but less than suspicion. By noon, the heat shimmers. You rest beneath a fig tree, watching worshippers leave the mosque, freshly washed and serene. Purity flows through the empire's rhythm, wash, pray, live. Yet a beggar limps by, filthy and shunned. In a world that equates dirt with sin, the unwashed are invisible. Still, the hammam remains the empire's mirror, sensual yet sacred, communal yet intimate. Gossip, deals, and rumors swirl beneath its domes. Perhaps tonight someone whispers about the foreigner who didn't know how to bathe. You smile. At least you smell good now. Evening brings lavender air, lamplight, and the sound of a woman brushing her hair. 100 strokes for luck, 100 for beauty. The Ottomans understood something profound. To cleanse the body is to quiet the soul. You feel it too, the peace after heat. The freshness of night air. The city hums softly, perfumed and alive, as if even the wind has just stepped from a bath. Tomorrow, you'll learn how this civilization that worships cleanliness also feasts like gods, and punishes like thunder. But tonight, under a sky of calm stars, skin tingling and heart still, you almost feel like you belong. You wake to the smell of roasted lamb, honey, and fresh bread. Your stomach growls like an angry janissary. Istanbul wakes hungry, vendors frying eggs, bakers pulling golden loaves from clay ovens, children balancing baskets of sesame-crusted simit. You follow your nose to the Grand Bazaar, the empire's stomach. Inside, the air hums with voices, coins, and 1,000 aromas: cinnamon, mint, leather, sweat, incense. If the hammam was the soul of Ottoman life, the bazaar is its appetite. Your first challenge: eating without offending someone powerful enough to confiscate your future. In this empire, food is politics. A tavern keeper with a grand mustache waves you in. Sit, friend. We cook for kings here. You settle on a low cushion. A plate arrives: grilled lamb, rice, pickled onions, steaming flatbread. You reach for a fork, silence falls. The waiter smiles. We use bread. You blush, tear a piece, and dig in properly. Flavors explode: smoke, salt, cumin, sumac, each bite a map of the empire's borders. Across the room, men argue about olive oil, others gossip about the sultan's banquets, feasts so lavish they needed 20 cooks just to slice fruit. Food here isn't just pleasure, it's theater and power. At Topkapi Palace, the sultan's chefs, an army of 1,000, cook to impress ambassadors into silence. Imagine pilaf shaped like mountains and sherbet tinted with crushed pearls. But you, of course, are not invited. You wander the bazaar, sampling dolma, borek, and honey-soaked lakma. You eat like a janissary. A vendor laughs. He tells you the empire built bakeries right after mosques, because without bread, an empire starves. Dropping bread is bad luck, people kiss it before lifting it back up. Even soup has hierarchy. The Korbasabesai, chief of soup, oversaw legions of ladlers. The poor eat lentils and onions, yet hospitality binds all. Knock on any door at dusk, and someone will share their meal. You buy sherbet from a man pouring from a brass swan. Refreshing? He asks. Perfect, you say, then you must pay double. You laugh. He doesn't. Welcome to Ottoman economics. The bazaar grows louder, shouts, donkeys, clattering trays. You nearly collide with a man balancing tea glasses who doesn't spill a drop. Ottoman gravity must be divine. At a street kitchen run by Sufi dervishes, you eat stew perfumed with smoke and flowers. They say sharing food brings you closer to God. For a moment, you believe them, then a tax collector storms in, striking a stall owner for bowing too late. Laughter dies. In this empire, even your lunch owes a tax to the sultan. By afternoon, you're full, sun-dazed, and poorer. At the waterfront, a fisherman hands you grilled mackerel and bread. The palace eats what we catch, he says. But the sultan's fish must never smell of sea. You gape. He grins. We send them alive in barrels. The empire runs on impossible logistics and willpower. You sit watching sunset bleed into the Bosphorus. The call to prayer drifts, everyone pauses. The city exhales, candles flicker, ovens breathe warmth. You taste how food binds strangers who share nothing but hunger. A cat steals your last bite of mackerel. You sigh. Fine, you whisper. We're both Ottomans now. The sea glows gold, the stars bloom, and your belly hums with the empire's heartbeat. Flavored with honey, smoke, and a hint of danger. Tomorrow, you'll learn what happens when indulgence meets the empire's darker hungers, law, order, and the price of survival. You don't notice the first scream at once. It blends with the city's noise, horses, bells, gulls, until it rises again, sharp as a blade. You follow it through winding alleys to a square where people stand motionless. At the center, a platform. A man kneels, hands bound, head bowed before a figure in red holding a curved sword. You freeze. Welcome to Ottoman justice. Executions here aren't chaos, they're theater. Ottoman law is a mosaic of Sharia, canon, and custom, a precise machine for balance and control. The crier announces the charge, stealing from the imperial stables. The crowd murmurs. That's theft from the empire's heart. The sword flashes once. Silence. The crowd disperses. You sense how deeply this world believes in hierarchy. Every man has his place, or the system trims him back into shape. Historians still argue whether Ottoman justice was harsh or surprisingly fair. Compared to Europe's tortures, at least there was procedure. Qadis, judges trained in law and theology, heard cases, questioned witnesses, and even allowed appeals. Mercy, however, was rare. Drawn to the courthouse, you step inside cool marble halls. A judge in a tall turban listens to a merchant and a farmer arguing over a donkey. Calmly, he asks, who fed it last? Whose name does it answer to? Then he orders both to call the animal. The donkey walks to the farmer. Case closed. Justice. Ottoman style. Outside, the city jail smells of damp straw and despair. Prisoners hum or shout through barred windows. Prisons here aren't for long stays. Most sentences are fines, exile, or humiliation. For minor crimes, you might be paraded in a takir kiafeti, a costume of shame. For nobles, death came by silk cord. For commoners, rope. The man you saw likely didn't qualify for silk. At a fountain, guards wash their hands and joke. One smirks, don't worry, we only punish the guilty. You're not reassured. As the sun sets, the muezzin's call softens the air. For all its brutality, the system works. No riots, no chaos, only order. A merchant invites you to sit, offering a pipe and a tale. He speaks of Suleiman the Magnificent, who once roamed the streets in disguise. He found a drunk singing near a mosque, the merchant says. By morning, the man was gone. Justice travels fast here. Then he grins. Still, our judges are clever. One ordered a noisy rooster executed, then gave it to the man who complained. Now you'll learn what noise truly means, you laugh. Even tyranny has humor. A line of janissaries passes, their white hats gleaming, steps precise. They enforce the law when words fail. The crowd parts in reverence. Later, music drifts from a tavern. Inside, a storyteller performs Karagaz's shadow puppetry, two fools mocking corrupt officials. You blink. Satire? Here. Yet in the shadows, mockery is allowed. Puppets can say what mouths cannot. Historians still debate whether this was harmless fun or quiet rebellion. Maybe both. You sip your coffee and let the laughter loose in the air. Outside, moonlight silvers the city. Somewhere, a vizier signs an execution order. Somewhere else, a mother whispers a prayer for fairness. You lie on a stone bench under the stars, realizing that in the Ottoman Empire, law isn't just punishment, it's performance. A dance of awe meant to remind everyone that order alone keeps the world from chaos. Tomorrow, behind palace walls, you'll discover another kind of law, a realm ruled by whispers, silk, and ambition no judge can tame. By dawn, the city exhales. Smoke drifts over rooftops, the Bosphorus a strip of molten silver. You rise, bleary-eyed, drawn again by the smell of bread, a familiar anchor in a world spinning between splendor and severity. The baker's fire glows warm, and the city feels clean again, yet you can't shake what you overheard in the tavern, whispers about Topkapi Palace, where decisions sharper than any sword are made, and empires are shaped behind jeweled screens. You have seen courts, executioners, and public theater. Now, it's time to see the heart of power. The palace sits like a sleeping beast, serene from afar. Guards in scarlet and gold flank the gates, halberds taller than you. Unblinking. Inside, silence reigns, not emptiness, but fear. Courtyards unfold in sequence. The first is public, petitioners, envoys, minor officials bustle. The second holds the divan chamber, where viziers meet. Beyond that lies the sultan's private domain, and further still, the invisible heart, the harem. In the divan, the grand vizier presides beneath turquoise and gold tiles, quills and seals arranged like weapons. The sultan listens behind the golden window, unseen. Every word trembles under his gaze. Disloyalty can vanish you before nightfall. Viziers debate trade, taxes, rebellions. A clerk reads citizen petitions, widows seeking justice, governors begging forgiveness. Every voice flinches at the sultan's name. Power fears higher power. When the meeting ends, a black silk eunuch guides you through his nick-tiled corridors to a heavy door. The sultan's garden, he whispers. Speak softly. Walk slower than your heartbeat. Under a fig tree, Sultan Suleiman writes in a notebook. No crown, no ceremony, just deep green robes and a jeweled dagger. He finishes a line, then says quietly, the empire is like a fountain. Clear, all drink. Clogged, the thirsty turn on each other. He asks what keeps a fountain clear. You shake your head. Fear, he says, fear of God, law, and me. Rising, his presence sharpens the air. Even the strongest empire rots from whispers. He walks toward the harem gate, you follow, shaken. The harem, whispered about and misunderstood, is not a playground. It's a system producing heirs, alliances, and control. Hundreds of women live within a strict hierarchy. The Valide Sultan wields immense power, her whispers capable of toppling viziers. Girls study dance and Arabic script, a woman embroiders the Sultan's monogram. None are entirely free, yet none appear unhappy. A teacher meets your gaze, every woman here dreams of power. Only one wakes with it. You ask about the rest. They fade, marry off, or become ghosts. A ney flute drifts from a small courtyard. A woman sings to herself, centuries of longing in her voice. She looks up. You don't belong here. You nod. No one ever does, she adds, disappearing into shadows, returning to the outer courtyard. The sun sinks. Guards and gates pass silently. The palace looms serene, yet heavy with what lies within, justice enforced by fear, beauty masking confinement, a ruler whose pen decides millions' fates. The call to prayer rises over domes and sea. Power in this empire is quiet, listening when all else speaks. Tomorrow, you'll explore another kind of power, one born not of fear, but wisdom. For now, you close your eyes, letting the city hum you back to uneasy sleep. Morning returns in gold and smoke, but today you awaken to the harsh rhythm of drums. The sound rolls across the city, steady, disciplined, ancient. You follow it through alleys where cats scatter and coffee sellers peek, until it draws you to a square outside the palace walls. There stands a column of men, silent, statuesque, terrifying, the Janissaries. If the Sultan's pen is might, these are his sword, tall white headdresses, curved blades gleaming in morning haze, polished armor, precise movements, they look invincible. A local guide whispers, most were taken as boys, Christian boys from the Balkans, the Caucasus. They call it Devshirm, the gathering. You blink, they were brought to Istanbul. Converted, trained. The Sultan becomes their father, the empire their family. They cannot marry, trade, or own property. They live for war, and for him. The idea sounds noble, until you grasp the cost, childhood erased, identity rewritten. The Janissaries march, each step a heartbeat not their own. Some smirk at officers, others trade resentful glances. They used to obey the Sultan, the guide lowers his voice. Now, sometimes, they make him obey them. A horn sounds. The column moves toward a training ground outside the city, a field ringed with tents, smelling of sweat, leather, and gunpowder. Recruits perform drills, muskets, archery, swordplay, horse riding. One young man struggles. An officer cracks the air near him. Precision, he says flatly. Without it, you die. If you die, you shame your brothers. You speak with a recruit, Petter, now Piali. I don't remember where I'm from, he laughs bitterly. Albania? Bosnia? I belong to the empire now. He shows his musket, carved with tiny vines. They let us leave something of ourselves. Later, the Sultan arrives for inspection, riding slowly past ranks of Janissaries. He stops before a veteran, touches his shoulder, may your service be remembered. Even these fearsome soldiers crave recognition. That night, you eat with them by a campfire, laughter, rough jokes, songs of old battles. An older Janissary, missing fingers, calls them sons of the state. No wives. No sons, no daughters. Only brothers. We live for the empire, and it lives through us. You ask about freedom. He laughs. Freedom. That's for poets and cowards. We have duty. Yet restlessness shows, talk of corrupt viziers, weak sultans, unpaid wages. Some mutter the core deserves more. A hush falls, no one agrees, no one denies. You recall your guide, sometimes, the Janissaries rule the Sultan. You see why. They are the empire's muscle, myth, and memory. A young voice asks, do you think the empire will last forever? No empire does, you answer. He nods, as if he knew, when you leave, the drums have stopped. The field is silent, embers crackling, the sea hissing in the distance. Walking back, you pass laughing children, barefoot, chasing puddles. How many will grow to wear white headdresses, march in unison, and forget their names? Tomorrow, you'll wander the markets, where survival depends on wit, not discipline. Tonight, though, the echo of Janissary drums rolls through your dreams, proud, unyielding, and a little too close to rebellion. You wake to chaos that smells wonderful, roasted nuts, honey syrup, leather, and countless other scents. You've wandered into the Grand Bazaar, a maze of arches and noise humming like a beehive. Every step echoes with bargaining, laughter, and coin scraping against coin. If the palace was order, this is glorious confusion. Beneath a vaulted ceiling painted red and gold, merchants master the art of talking and calculating at once. Someone thrusts a silk scarf into your hand, another offers spices, cinnamon, saffron, crushed rose petals glittering like treasure. You smell coffee, sweat, musk, and money. A jeweler grins through a silver-dusted beard. You look like a foreigner, he says. That means I like you, and that means you'll pay too much. You laugh. He isn't joking, the Grand Bazaar is the empire in miniature. From Budapest to Baghdad, every coin traded here ripples outward. But the unwritten rule is clear, no one gets rich alone. Deeper in, the air thickens with incense. A money changer sits cross-legged, weighing coins with painstaking care. You don't look at the coin, he says. You listen to it. He flicks one, it rings clear. Another, dull. Hear that? The sound of lies. Before you can test your coin, a commotion erupts. A man accuses a cloth seller of cheating. Instead of a brawl, a market inspector appears, rod and balance in hand. He tests the weights. Smashes one stone, and the crowd cheers. Fair trade keeps the empire breathing, he mutters, walking away. Cheating finds subtler forms. Men whisper over coffee, exchanging notes, deals, or quiet rebellion. Coffeehouses become pressure valves, plots and poetry intertwined. Careful, the owner whispers. Too many opinions here can get you exiled to Cyprus. You nearly choke, and he laughs. Outside, the bazaar roars again. You attempt bargaining, badly. A rug merchant quotes absurdly. You counter with half, he swears you rob him. Minutes later, you pay slightly less than his first offer but double its value. You're learning, he pats your shoulder. Next time, lose more gracefully. Everything is theater, haggling is about dignity, not money. You pass stalls of perfumes, scent is currency too, rising with fashion and rumor. A scribe copies letters in glittering calligraphy. Gold dust, he says proudly. Even words deserve to shine. Love letters or death threats, the pay is the same. By midday, your pockets lighter, you watch the bazaar pulse like a living organism. Soldiers fight, viziers plan, but merchants keep it spinning. An old spice seller offers a fig and a story. The sultan once disguised himself, bought saffron, was overcharged, and the next day the merchant's shop closed. His ghost still haunts the stalls, he winks. Truth and legend trade at the same rate here. As you leave, sunlight filters through colored domes, scattering gold and blue. The bazaar is a symphony of humanity, every coin, lie, and laugh plays a note. Outside, the city smells of salt and grilled fish, and the call to prayer rises, mingling with seagulls. Tomorrow, you'll explore mosques and mystics. For now, as the bazaar closes, you feel oddly peaceful. Maybe it's the coffee. Maybe the sense that, for a brief moment, you belonged in the humming heart of the Ottoman world, where gold sings and gossip governs. The next morning, you wake to the haunting, rolling music of the adhan, the call to prayer. It sweeps across Istanbul like a slow wave, echoing from one minaret to another, until the entire city seems to hum with it. You lie there listening, eyes half open, and realize that every sound, every breath, every heartbeat here is tuned to faith. You follow the sound toward the great domes that dominate the skyline. The air is cool and perfumed with the faint sweetness of incense and sea breeze. Fishermen pause mid-cast, shopkeepers freeze mid-transaction, and a shoemaker sets down his tools just to press his forehead to the earth. In the Ottoman Empire, faith isn't something you schedule. It's the rhythm everything else fits around. You reach the Suleymani Mosque, the masterpiece of Mimar Sinan, and step inside through a courtyard lined with marble columns. The moment your feet touch the carpet, the city noise fades to silence. The vast dome above seems to float, weightless, like heaven has quietly bent closer to listen. Light spills through stained glass, painting the air in honeyed colors. You watch men and women moving softly, whispering prayers. Their gestures are fluid, ancient. There's no preacher shouting fire, no chorus demanding attention. Just breath, repetition, surrender. It feels less like ceremony and more like music made of silence. A scholar nearby notices your awe. Faith, he says, is geometry made of devotion. You tilt your head. He smiles. See the symmetry? The dome is the universe. The minaret, the bridge between worlds. We live beneath order, so we may live without chaos. He returns to his book, a thick manuscript of commentaries on the Quran written in looping Arabic script. The ink glints red and black like veins and arteries on parchment. You sit quietly, thinking about what he said. In this world, religion isn't just belief, it's architecture, law, and politics all braided together. The Sultan himself is not only ruler but also caliph, protector of the faith. Loyalty to him is both civic duty and spiritual obedience, but as with everything in this empire, devotion has its shadows. After prayer, you follow a crowd outside to a courtyard where a preacher stands on a wooden platform. His voice booms, fierce and certain. Disbelief brings decay. He cries. We must guard against corruption, against innovation. The people murmur, nodding. But off to the side, another man shakes his head and mutters, too much fire burns the house. You glance at him, he's dressed simply, eyes kind, carrying a book bound in worn leather. He notices your curiosity and smiles. Come. He says quietly. There's another way to speak to God. You follow him through winding alleys to a small, unmarked door. Inside, a dim room lit by oil lamps, where men and women sit in a circle. There's no pulpit, no sermon. Just a soft drum, a flute, and low chanting that vibrates through the floor. This is a tekka, the man explains. A Sufi lodge. We pray by remembering. He closes his eyes and begins to sway. The others join him, their rhythm rising, their breath sinking. Soon the room feels like it's breathing with them. You realize this is dhikr, the act of repeating God's name until all else falls away. It's mesmerizing. You forget time, place, even language. For a moment. It feels like you've slipped between heartbeats into something eternal. When the chanting stops, the leader smiles. We believe the heart is a mirror, he says. Polish it, and it will reflect the divine. Outside again, the city feels different, less overwhelming, more alive. You see faith everywhere now, in the baker who gives extra bread to the poor, in the craftsman who carves God's name on a chair leg no one will see, in the child who pauses his game to pray when the adhan begins again. But faith isn't uniform. You overhear heated debates at a coffee house, a theologian condemning mystics for heresy, a Sufi defending his visions as divine truth. Historians still argue whether the empire's spiritual diversity made it strong or sowed the seeds of division. Perhaps both. Later that day, you visit the Ayub Sultan Mosque, where pilgrims wash their hands and faces before stepping into the courtyard. It's said that every new sultan is girded with the sword of Osman here, a ritual binding political power to divine approval. You watch a group of janissaries escorting a young prince into the shrine, his face pale with nerves. Faith and authority blur until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. You wander toward the cemetery behind the mosque, where thousands of tombstones stand like frozen waves. Each one tilts slightly, crowned with carved turbans, symbols of rank and piety. Some bear verses in elegant calligraphy, lines of poetry, fragments of prayer, reminders that even the mighty sleep beneath dust. A caretaker notices you reading and says softly, "We build our graves close to mosques, so that when the living pray, the dead may listen." It's a strangely comforting thought. As dusk falls, you climb a hill overlooking the Golden Horn. Below, hundreds of lamps flicker on, mosques, markets, palaces, all pulsing to the same quiet rhythm of prayer. You think about the empire's unspoken contract, obedience in exchange for belonging. Devotion in exchange for peace. You wonder what happens if you pray differently. That night, you ask a local scholar, "What if someone doubts?" He pauses, stroking his beard. "Doubt is a kind of faith," he says at last. "It means you are still searching." He leans closer. "But be careful who hears you searching." You laugh softly, unsure if he's joking. Back in your room, you lie awake listening to the city breathe. The call to prayer echoes again, quieter now, almost a lullaby. You think of the Sufi lodge, the scholar's symmetry, the preacher's fire, the sultan's authority. All these voices overlapping, faith as a symphony, not a solo. Tomorrow, you'll face a different kind of faith, belief in medicine, in science, in the fragile power of the human body to heal itself. You'll need it, because that little cough you've been ignoring, it's about to become a real problem in a world without antibiotics. For now, you close your eyes and let the rhythm of Istanbul's prayers carry you toward uneasy sleep, one last Allahu Akbar floating like incense through the night air. Morning comes with a faint metallic taste in your mouth. You cough, once, then again. The second time, it hurts. It feels sharp, raw. You tell yourself it's nothing, dust from the markets, maybe the sea air, but deep down, you know. You've read too many accounts, heard too many whispers. The Ottomans, for all their grandeur, have their share of invisible enemies. Disease travels faster than any caravan, and the empire's networks, its lifeblood of trade, carry both silk and sickness in equal measure. You try to walk it off, heading down to the harbor. The morning air is heavy with brine and smoke. Ships creak in their moorings, unloading barrels of figs, copper, and Persian carpets. Dockworkers shout in Turkish, Greek, Armenian, Italian, 100 tongues in a single sentence. But beneath the bustle, there's tension. You can feel it. People move around one ship in particular, keeping their distance. A sailor coughs violently into his sleeve. Another lies on the dock, pale, a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. Two guards appear and begin shouting for everyone to clear away. Plague, someone whispers. You step back instinctively. This isn't the Great Black Death of centuries past, but its descendant, Pestis Minor, as chroniclers will later call it. Still deadly, still feared. In a city like this, it spreads like spilled ink. You hurry inland, but everywhere signs of sickness appear. A doctor in a tall white turban rides past on a mule, face half covered by a linen cloth. Behind him, two servants carry a brazier of burning herbs, juniper, myrrh, rosemary, to cleanse the air. You watch them disappear into a narrow street marked with a red crescent painted on a door, a house under quarantine. Later, you find yourself at the edge of the bazaar, where a crowd gathers around a small wooden cart. A man in green robes stands atop it, waving a scroll. "Repent!" he cries. "The plague is punishment for arrogance." Another voice, sharper, calmer, interrupts him. It's a physician, gray-bearded, with a pouch full of dried herbs. "No," he says firmly. "It is not punishment. It is ignorance. We must clean our water, our hands, our hearts." The preacher glares at him. "You deny God's will." The doctor's eyes are sad. "I honor it by trying to save his creation." You feel caught between them, the comfort of divine reason, the discipline of human logic. The empire itself lives in that tension, always balancing the invisible and the measurable. You follow the doctor to his quarters. The air smells of vinegar and camphor. On a table lie surgical instruments, bronze scalpels, glass syringes, ivory tweezers. He dips a rag in vinegar and presses it to your forehead. "You don't look well," he murmurs. You tell him about your cough. He nods, checks your pulse, then holds up a thin glass vial filled with something cloudy. "This is not a cure," he warns, "but it helps the body fight." He pours a few drops onto a spoon. "It tastes like bitter earth and iron. Pray," he adds. "And rest. Both are medicine." You lie on a cot as the doctor tends to others, sailors, beggars, even a soldier with sores on his arms. He hums softly as he works. You watch him draw blood, grind herbs, whisper prayers under his breath. Medicine here is neither science nor superstition, it's both, blended into something beautifully human. As night falls, you hear the muezzins call again. Softer this time, filtered through layers of distance and incense smoke. You think about the bodies being buried outside the city walls, wrapped in shrouds, their graves quick and shallow. The doctor sits beside you, exhausted. "You want to know a secret?" he says. "We do not fear death because we believe the soul is light, it cannot be buried." He looks out the window at the stars. But even light flickers when it's tired. You close your eyes, letting the fever pull you somewhere between waking and dream. You see flashes, mosques rising like mountains, ships burning at sea, a marketplace emptied by silence. Then, suddenly, the sound of water. You're standing in the courtyard of a hammam, a bathhouse. Steam curls around marble columns. Attendants move like ghosts, carrying copper basins of hot water. You strip down and step inside. The air envelopes you, thick and clean. The Ottomans, you remember, prize cleanliness not just as hygiene but as holiness. To bathe is to renew the soul. You sink into the warmth, and for the first time in days, your cough eases. A man next to you, old, kind-eyed, says, "Do you know why our baths have domes?" You shake your head. "So steam may rise to heaven," he says. "Our sins go with it." When you wake again, you're in the doctor's room, fever gone. He's asleep at his desk, head resting on his notes. You watch him for a long time. You realize the empire doesn't survive because of its palaces or armies, it endures because of people like him, stubbornly healing in the shadow of despair. You step outside, the air crisp, the plague beginning to wane. In the streets, children play again. Merchants reopen their stalls. Life, fragile as it is, resumes. Somewhere, a preacher still warns of sin. Somewhere else, a scientist still searches for causes. And between them, the empire continues to breathe. Half faith, half reason, all human. You cough once more, lightly this time, and smile. You've survived another day in a world always one step from collapse, but soon, you'll leave this city of domes and disease for another frontier, the empire's endless hunger for expansion, for conquest, for something that will make it feel immortal. You wake to the sound of chisels. The air thrums with rhythm, hammer against stone, measured, relentless. You blink, disoriented, and realize you're standing in the middle of a construction site that might as well be heaven for anyone who loves geometry. Columns rise like petrified trees, arches bloom in half-finished symmetry, and everywhere, men swarm like ants, cutting marble, mixing lime, chanting prayers under their breath before lifting another block. This, you learn, is one of Mimar Sinan's projects. The man himself stands nearby, surveying everything with the calm precision of a god disguised as a foreman. His white beard is trimmed short, his eyes sharp enough to measure distances without rulers. He sees you staring and waves you closer. "You're late," he says, as if you were always meant to be part of this impossible endeavor. You stammer something about just passing by, but he's already walking, gesturing for you to follow. "Do you see that dome?" he asks, pointing to a massive shell of stone rising above scaffolds. "It must float, not sit. If it sits, it dies." You nod, pretending you understand, the weight of the heavens, he continues, must rest on air. And just like that, you realize, this isn't architecture, it's faith expressed in stone. Sinan, born a Christian boy in Anatolia, once taken by the Devserm system to serve as a janissary, rose not by sword but by compass. He built aqueducts, bridges, palaces, and more than 300 mosques. His greatest works, the Suleymani and the Selimai, still shimmer centuries later, testaments to an empire that wanted to touch God and prove it could. You step around piles of cut marble, watching workers hoist blocks using wooden cranes and ropes greased with olive oil. The smell of lime and sweat fills the air. A young apprentice hurries past with a parchment of sketches, tripping slightly. Sinan catches him by the sleeve. "Careful," the old architect murmurs. "Every mistake costs a soul." You glance at him, unsure if he's joking. He isn't. Here, death is part of construction. The empire's architectural miracles often claim lives: stonemasons crushed under falling slabs, scaffolders slipping into the void, entire vaults collapsing before the geometry is perfected. Rumor even says Sinan once buried an unlucky worker inside a foundation to appease the spirits of balance. Historians still argue whether that's true, or just an architectural legend told to scare lazy apprentices. Either way, it makes you stand a little farther from the edge. At noon, the muezzins call echoes over the half-built city. And work pauses. Men kneel where they stand, dust clinging to their foreheads as they pray. Sinan watches, then turns back to his plans. His devotion is different, he worships through mathematics. You look up again at the dome, light slicing through gaps in the scaffolding. You think about how this empire builds to outlast time. The Byzantines left Hagia Sophia, the Ottomans answer with their own domes, not to imitate but to surpass. Each mosque is a love letter to permanence, written in mortar. Sinan leads you to a smaller chamber, where artisans carve arabesques into marble panels. The air smells faintly sweet, stone dust mixed with rosewater. One carver, his hands trembling from age, shapes a tulip so delicate it seems alive. Beauty, Sinan says quietly, is a form of obedience. You ask him what he means. When you make something perfect, he explains, you remind the world that creation began with symmetry. Allah loves balance. Later, you climb the scaffolding with him. The higher you go, the more the city unfolds beneath: domes, minarets, aqueducts, ships gliding down the Golden Horn. Istanbul looks alive, like a living mosaic shifting with light. At the top, wind whistles through the wooden beams. Sinan squints against the sun, studying the curvature of the dome. A dome must breathe, he murmurs. Too tight, and it cracks. Too loose, and it collapses. You realize he could just as easily be talking about the empire itself. That night, you share bread and cheese with the workers. Someone strums a saz, a long-necked lute, and sings about a mason who fell from a minaret and was caught by the wind. The men laugh, but the humor feels uneasy, too close to truth. A man beside you whispers, they say Sinan hides secrets in his walls. Names, prayers, even maps to lost cities. You raise an eyebrow. You believe that? He shrugs. In this empire, everything hides something. You can't argue with that. The next day, the finishing touches go up, the gold crescent on the minaret, the marble tiles polished to mirror brightness. When the Sultan himself comes to inspect, you blend into the crowd. The ruler stands beneath the dome, looking up. The light catches his robes, the gold thread glowing like captured sunlight. It feels eternal, he says softly. Sinan bows. Majesty, only Allah is eternal. I merely borrow his light for a while. Everyone smiles. Even the Sultan, but as the crowd disperses, you notice cracks forming in the scaffolding. The structure groans. A beam snaps. Someone screams, you move without thinking. Pulling a young apprentice away as planks crash down, sending a cloud of dust across the courtyard. when it clears, the dome stands unharmed, but 3 workers lie still beneath the rubble. Sinan kneels beside them, eyes closed. No one speaks for a long time. Finally, he whispers, "Even the most perfect circle begins and ends in dust." You leave before dawn the next day, the mosque gleaming in early light, its dome finally complete. From the hills, it looks like the world's heartbeat made visible. You think of Sinan, the tireless builder, and how every empire needs such dreamers, those who shape impossible things while knowing they'll never truly last. As the city fades behind you, you realize something unsettling. In this world, beauty is never gentle. It demands sweat, blood, and silence. The Ottomans build like gods, but they live and die like men, and the chisels keep striking, always striking. You travel east, along the old Silk Road, where caravans crawl like patient serpents across the plains. The empire breathes differently out here, less marble and call to prayer, more wind and whispers. This is the Ottoman frontier of secrets, where power doesn't always wear armor, it wears perfume, paper, and smiles that mean everything and nothing. Your guide, a wiry man named Semel with a grin too sharp to trust, leads you to Aleppo, the empire's trade artery. The city hums like a hive. Silk merchants bargain in 15 languages, Armenian jewelers weigh sapphires by candlelight, and French traders sip coffee, pretending not to spy. You follow Semel into a dim han, a caravanserai where deals are made behind locked doors. "Welcome," he whispers, "to the empire's real palace, the market." Inside, the smell is intoxicating: cardamom, ink, musk, and damp wool. Scrolls change hands faster than coins. One man sells spices, another sells letters sealed with wax. You watch him carefully. The paper glows faintly in lamplight, stamped with the Sultan's tugra, that intricate royal signature that curls like a riddle. You glance at Semel. "They sell royal letters here." He smirks. "They sell copies. The originals are somewhere else." That somewhere else turns out to be an upstairs room hidden behind silk curtains. You duck inside and find a woman writing by lamplight, her quill moving like a dancer. She doesn't look up. "Close the door," she says, her Turkish clipped and precise. Semel bows deeply. "Efendim, this is the traveler I told you about." Her eyes finally lift, gray, unreadable. "You've seen much, foreigner," she says. "Tell me, have you seen loyalty?" You open your mouth, but she waves you silent. "Never mind. It's rarer than gold." You realize she's not just a scribe, she's an intelligence courier. Her name, you learn later, is Layla Hanum, one of the Kalamai, the bureaucratic elite who keep the empire alive with ink and secrecy. She rolls up a finished letter and seals it with wax. "You'll deliver this," she says, pressing it into Semel's hands. "And you," she adds to you, "will forget you were ever here." You nod automatically, but curiosity burns. The wax bears not the Sultan's mark, but that of the Grand Vizier. You've just witnessed state espionage disguised as correspondence. As you leave, Semel leans close. "Layla doesn't just write letters," he whispers. "She writes history before it happens." You laugh, thinking he's exaggerating, but over the following days, you realize he's right. The Ottoman Empire thrives on paper trails as much as trade routes. Orders, decrees, and coded dispatches flow between Istanbul, Cairo, Baghdad, and Venice, and with every letter, there's a counter-letter. Every courier might be a spy. Every merchant, a double agent. Historians still argue whether the empire's intelligence network rivaled Europe's later systems, but one thing's certain: nothing in this world happens without someone reading it first. One evening, Semel brings you to a coffeehouse tucked behind the mosque. The smell of roasted beans fills the air, dark, rich, earthy. Men sit cross-legged, smoking hookahs and murmuring in low voices. On the wall hangs a poem written in Arabic calligraphy. A word spoken is an arrow released. At the back, Layla waits, her veil drawn low. Coffee, she says, is how revolutions begin. You sip cautiously. It's thick, bitter, almost oily, but strangely comforting. She gestures to the crowd. Every table here is a parliament. Poets debate law. Sailors recite philosophy. Once, the Sultan tried to ban it, too dangerous, he said. You grin. Because of the caffeine? She chuckles softly. Because of the thinking. Indeed, coffeehouses in Istanbul once faced closures for being breeding grounds of sedition. Men plotted reforms, conspiracies, even coups, over tiny porcelain cups. You watch as a man slips Layla a folded paper beneath the table. She reads it, frowns, and passes it to Simul. The Persians move again, she mutters. And Venice grows bold. Then, almost to herself, empires don't fall, they leak. Later, outside, the night air is cold. You and Simul walk through narrow alleys lined with latticed windows. You see, he says, the empire isn't one voice. It's thousands, merchants, viziers, spies, poets, all trying to be heard without being hanged. You stop beneath an archway where pigeons roost. A single sheet of paper flutters down, landing at your feet. It's a scrap of coded writing, looping script with strange symbols. Simul picks it up, squints, then smiles. Love letter, he says. Or death sentence. Hard to tell with Ottoman handwriting. The next morning, Layla is gone. Her chamber abandoned, the ink on her desk still wet. Simul frowns, muttering that she's either fled or been reassigned, two words that mean the same thing here. You find one last note she left behind, pressed between sheets of parchment. It reads, truth travels slower than rumor, but it always arrives. You fold it into your pocket and leave the city behind, heading toward the coast where ships wait to carry you deeper into this web of ambition. As the desert fades into sea, you think about how fragile the empire's brilliance really is. Its power rests not on swords or ships, but on words, words written, stolen, silenced. Somewhere, a courier gallops toward the capital with a message that might change history. Somewhere else, another burns it before dawn, and above them both, the empire hums quietly, dreaming of eternity while drowning in its own secrets. You sip the last of your coffee, cold now, bitter as truth, and you know you're not done yet. You wake to the sound of gulls and the smell of salt. The sea stretches out before you, dazzling in the morning light, and somewhere beyond that horizon lies the empire's other face, the one shaped by wind, cannon smoke, and superstition. You're at the imperial shipyards of Gallipoli, where the Sultan's navy once ruled the Mediterranean. The docks pulse with energy. Hundreds of men hammer and haul, their voices lost under the thunder of waves and the rhythmic clang of iron on wood. A bearded overseer with a scarred face spots you lingering near the pier. New recruit. He growls. You nod before thinking. He claps you on the back. Good. We're short on fools today. And just like that, you're drafted into the Ottoman fleet. Your ship, the Sultani, is a galley, long, sleek, bristling with oars. Each one manned by chained rowers, criminals, war captives, and the unlucky. You glance down the benches and see faces from half the known world, Greeks, Italians, Africans, Slavs, all united by rhythm and exhaustion. You take a seat among the free crew, tasked with minor duties, which quickly translates to anything no one else wants to do. Fetching tar, scrubbing decks, swatting flies. The captain, a lean man with eyes like storm clouds, introduces himself as Rees Murad. The sea, he says, is loyal to no flag. Remember that, and maybe you'll live. He gestures toward the harbor mouth. Dozens of ships are assembling. A fleet bound for patrol along the Aegean, where Venetian privateers still haunt the waters, ever fought pirates. He asks, you shake your head. Good, he says dryly. They'll teach you quickly. The voyage begins at dusk. The sails swell, the drums beat, and Istanbul fades into mist. The oars slice through dark water, the rhythm hypnotic. Above, the stars bloom like spilled salt across black velvet. You feel a strange peace, until the first storm hits. The wind howls like something alive. Waves slam against the hull, spraying icy foam. Men shout prayers to Allah, Christ, and every saint known to sailors. The ship lurches violently, and you clutch a rope, heart pounding. Someone beside you mutters about sea jinn, spirits that drag ships down when angered. Another swears he saw glowing lights under the waves, the eyes of drowned captains. Historians still argue whether Ottoman sailors truly believed in sea monsters or just used the stories to explain bad luck, but in that moment, you don't care. When the sea roars, reason drowns first. By dawn, the storm passes. The deck is slick with rain and blood, one man crushed by a fallen mast. Another lost overboard. Rees Murad surveys the damage, expression unreadable. The sea takes its share, he says simply. For 3 days, the fleet drifts through calm waters, repairing sails, drying gunpowder. You help patch a hole in the hull with tar and linen, your hands blistered. Then, on the 4th morning, the lookout shouts. A thin column of smoke rises on the horizon. The captain squints. Venetians. The drums start again, slower now, heavier. Cannons are rolled into position, ropes tightened, sails drawn. You watch the approaching shape, a smaller galley, flying a crimson flag with a golden lion. Fire. Murad commands. The Ottoman cannons thunder, smoke choking the air. The enemy answers. A cannonball screams past your head and shatters the mainmast. Splinters rain down like knives, you duck, coughing, half-blind in the haze. Somewhere, men are screaming, somewhere else they're singing. You realize how absurdly loud death is. Murad's voice cuts through the chaos. Board them. Hooks fly, ropes tighten, and suddenly the ships collide. You stumble across the gangplank amid the clash of steel and the stench of salt and sweat. You're no warrior, but survival has its own instincts. You swing a broken oar at anyone who gets too close, then, just as quickly, it's over. The Venetian ship surrenders. Survivors kneel, hands bound. The Ottomans cheer, exhausted. Murad turns to you, blood on his cheek but smiling faintly. See? The sea likes you. You laugh weakly, unsure if it's a compliment or a warning. Days later, you dock on the island of Rhodes for supplies. The harbor is a graveyard of broken statues and half-sunken ships, remnants of old crusades. You wander through them at sunset, the air humming with cicadas. An old sailor joins you, his face lined like driftwood. You know, he says, they say there's a monster under these waters. Half fish, half woman. Sings to men who've killed too many. You smile. And then what? She forgives them, he says. Or drowns them. Depends on her mood. You both watch the sea, its surface perfectly still. Somewhere deep below, you imagine the bones of fleets, Byzantine, Venetian, Ottoman, all tangled together, history resting in salt and silence. When you return to Gallipoli weeks later, the empire already feels smaller. You've seen its power from the deck of a ship, felt its heartbeat in the oars, and you realize something important: empires that rule the sea are never stable. They're always moving, always hungry. Murad gives you a parting gift, a small brass compass, worn and dented. For when you forget where home is, he says, you thank him, though you suspect he knows. You never had one here. That night, you sleep by the harbor. The waves murmur against the stones, carrying echoes of battle, prayer, and laughter. The stars hang low, reflected in the water like 1,000 unblinking eyes. The empire, magnificent and monstrous, stretches endlessly before you, its borders drawn not in ink, but in tides, and as you drift toward sleep, you swear you hear a woman's voice singing beneath the waves. you hope she's in a forgiving mood. You're standing at the edge of the Golden Horn, the twilight sky painted in a haze of rose and copper. The call to prayer drifts through the humid air, echoing across domes and minarets, dissolving into the slow lap of water against the harbor stones. You take one long breath and realize something quietly astonishing: you've survived a day, perhaps even a lifetime, in the Ottoman Empire. Well, sort of. You're intact, if exhausted. And though your clothes smell of spice and sweat, there's a kind of satisfaction in the grime. You've walked where sultans, janissaries, and poets once did. You've seen the empire's contradictions up close, its grandeur and its grit, its refinement and its rawness. You remember the heat of the markets, the dizzy scent of saffron and leather, the chorus of donkeys and beggars, the glint of scimitars under the sun. You've eaten dates from Damascus and lamb from Anatolia. You've sipped water from a copper cup carved centuries before your time. You've watched power flicker in the hands of viziers and fade in the tired eyes of scholars. And through it all, you've sensed that peculiar Ottoman blend of divine destiny and human chaos, the feeling that history was both scripted by heaven and constantly rewritten by whoever could seize the pen. Now, in this last stretch, the city quiets. The sun slips below the horizon like a coin disappearing into a fountain. Shadows thicken between the domes. The scent of baked bread wafts from a distant bakery. A muezzin's final note fades into silence. You walk the cobblestones slower now, no longer rushing to dodge a janissary patrol or haggle for figs. There's time at last to notice the smaller details, the chipped mosaic underfoot, the flicker of candlelight behind a lattice window, the low murmur of a prayer whispered for no one but the night. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman Empire's end was inevitable or simply self-inflicted, whether it fell by the sword or by the weight of its own splendor. But as you breathe in the last traces of its evening air, it doesn't feel like decline at all. It feels like something immense folding gently into memory, like the sea withdrawing from a shore it shaped for centuries. The empire lingers in the rhythm of languages it once joined, in recipes that still simmer, in domes that still gleam under the Turkish sun. You realize history doesn't vanish, it just hums a little softer. If you listen closely, beneath the hum of your fan, maybe you can still hear that faint rhythm, the shuffle of silk slippers in a marble corridor, the creak of oars on the Bosporus, the sigh of a palace door closing for the last time. You've crossed through sultans' dreams and commoners' hunger, through the smoke of the baths and the shimmer of gold leaf on Quranic pages. You've been a visitor in an empire that spanned 3 continents and yet somehow always felt like one long, slow heartbeat, and now, as you let your eyes drift shut, the world of the Ottomans fades. The water stills. The lamps flicker out. The last call to prayer melts into the dark. You feel the weight of centuries ease off your shoulders. Replaced by something light, like silk on skin. History exhales, and so do you. Time to rest now. Let the domes and towers dissolve into mist, the soldiers and scholars fade into shadow. There's no rush, no duty, no decree left to follow. Just the quiet lull of the past, wrapping around you like a warm blanket.